Enter a world where reality warps and fear feels familiar. Each eerie tale blurs the line between nightmare and truth, inviting you to explore the strange, the supernatural, and the psychologically twisted. Dim the lights and take a glimpse into madness. The desert holds many secrets, whispers carried on dry winds and buried beneath endless sand. For those seeking oblivion or redemption, such places offer peculiar bargains, deals struck not with devils, but with forces far older and less predictable. Tonight's tale follows one such pilgrim, stumbling across a threshold that marks the boundary between desperation and transformation. A cautionary reminder that when we stare into the abyss, something within the darkness stares back in this glimpse into madness. The neon sign buzzed and flickered against the darkening sky, its red glow creating a small island of lurid color in the vast emptiness of the desert. Last chance bar, it proclaimed in irregular flashes, though the sea had burned out long ago. Beneath it, a weathered wooden structure huddled against the landscape like a wounded animal. Cal Rooker sat motionless on his motorcycle, helmet dangling from nerveless fingers, staring at the establishment with hollow eyes. He hadn't planned to stop, hadn't planned much of anything beyond putting distance between himself and everything, the towns, the people, the memories, the screaming. His throat burned with thirst. 3 hours on desert roads would do that, but it wasn't just water he craved, something stronger. Something to dull the edges of consciousness that cut too sharply against his mind. The parking lot contained only 2 other vehicles, a battered pickup truck and an ancient Harley with faded paint and mismatched parts. Cal swung his leg over his bike, wincing as pain lanced through his bad knee. Another souvenir from Afghanistan. One of the luckier ones. The door to the bar swung open with a protesting creak. Inside, the air hung heavy with cigarette smoke and the sour tang of spilled beer. 4 ceiling fans spun lazily overhead, doing more to stir the heat than dispel it. The walls were covered with the expected southwestern kitsch, cattle skulls, rusted license plates, photographs yellowed with age. Cal's eyes adjusted slowly to the dim interior. 3 patrons occupied the space, an elderly man dozing in the corner booth, a middle-aged woman in flannel staring into her glass like it held answers instead of whiskey, and a twitchy fellow at the bar who seemed unnaturally alert, his head swiveling toward the door when Cal entered. Behind the bar stood a man who might have been carved from the surrounding desert itself. Leathery skin stretched tight across his face, deep lines radiating from the corners of eyes that blinked with deliberate slowness. His age was impossible to determine, somewhere between 50 and fossil. Evening, the bartender nodded as Cal approached. The name Grady was embroidered on his cowboy-style shirt. Bourbon, Cal muttered, sliding onto a stool. Neat. The bartender's movements were economical as he poured 2 fingers of amber liquid. Cal noticed his hands, dirt permanently embedded beneath the fingernails, knuckles like small stones beneath paper-thin skin. Passing through? Grady asked, sliding the glass across the scarred wooden surface. Cal nodded, not inviting conversation. He tossed back half the bourbon in a single swallow, welcoming the familiar burn. It was cheap stuff, but it would do the job. That was all that mattered now. Something caught his eye, a handwritten sign above the bar's mirror, the letters uneven but bold. Snakebite happy hour. Survive the night, drink free for life. Despite himself, Cal snorted. Tourist gimmick? Grady's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. No tourists out here, friend, just travelers and locals. He gestured toward a terrarium partially hidden behind the counter. Inside, coiled on the desert sand, lay a diamondback rattlesnake, its scales gleaming dully in the bar's low light. You're joking. Cal finished his drink, signaling for another. Tradition going back 50 years, Grady said, refilling the glass. Sundown, you take the bite. Sunrise, if you're still drawing breath, you drink free. Forever. He paused. Need to be alive to collect, of course. Cal chuckled at the preposterous challenge. That's insane. And illegal. Grady shrugged. Sheriff Dawson took the challenge back in '97. Still comes by first Tuesday of every month. The twitchy man a few seats down suddenly laughed. A high, brittle sound that set Cal's teeth on edge. Traditions! Sacred customs! The desert demands them! He slapped the counter with an open palm, making his empty glass jump. Cal studied him more carefully. Mid-30s, perhaps, with darting eyes and a perpetual grin that contained too many teeth. His clothes were expensive, but rumpled like he'd been wearing them for days. A thin sheen of sweat glistened on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "Don't mind Jerry," Grady said quietly. "Been driving 16 hours straight by his telling. Caffeine and whatever else keeping him upright." Jerry swiveled on his stool to face Cal directly. "You military? You got that look? That stare they always talk about." He tapped his temple. "Seen things, haven't you? Terrible things. Me too, brother. Different battlefield, same war." Cal deliberately turned away. "Another," he said to Grady, though his glass was still half full. "Of course you can walk away," Jerry continued undeterred. "That's what they all do. Walk away, hide, pretend." He leaned closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "But you can't outrun it. It follows you. In your dreams, in the mirror, in the silence." Something in those words found purchase in Cal's mind. The silence. God, how he hated the silence. When the world grew quiet, that's when the voices of the dead grew loudest. "Shut up," Cal said quietly. Jerry either didn't hear or didn't care. "Know what I think? I think you're afraid. Not of dying. No, you've made friends with death already, haven't you? I think you're afraid of feeling. Afraid of living." Cal's hand tightened around his glass. The rational part of his brain, the part trained in combat assessment, threat recognition, registered that Jerry wasn't physically dangerous, just another broken man seeking chemical comfort in a forgotten corner of nowhere. It took one to know one. "I'll do it," Jerry announced suddenly, slapping the bar again. "The Snakebite challenge. Why the hell not? Either I die, which, let's be honest, we're all doing incrementally, or I drink free forever. Win-win." Grady didn't seem surprised. He nodded slowly, reaching under the counter. "Sundown's in 20 minutes. You sure about this?" Jerry's grin widened impossibly. "Oh, I've never been surer of anything in my life." He turned to Cal. "What about you, soldier boy? Care to join the celebration? Or would you rather keep drifting?" The word struck Cal like a physical blow. Drifting. That's exactly what he'd been doing since his discharge, since watching the Humvee ahead of his explode in a blinding flash, since pulling charred bodies from the wreckage, since the little girl with pleading eyes had died beneath his hands, blood seeping between his fingers no matter how hard he pressed. Cal carefully measured each word. Some things aren't meant to be celebrated. Jerry leaned forward, eyes gleaming with manic intensity. But that's exactly what needs celebrating. The horror, the pain, the cosmic joke of it all. Either embrace the madness or let it eat you alive, piece by piece. From the corner booth, the elderly man stirred. "Let him be, Jerry," he called, his voice surprisingly strong. "Each man faces the desert in his own time." Jerry ignored him, his attention fixed solely on Cal. "What are you waiting for? Permission? Absolution? A sign from the universe?" Cal met his stare. "You don't know anything about me." A slight smirk stretched across Jerry's lips. "I know you're a dead man walking," he replied, suddenly serious. "Just like me. The only difference is I've stopped pretending otherwise." The bar fell silent, except for the ceiling fan's rhythmic creaking. Outside, the last crimson light of sunset painted the windows blood red. "Time's up," Grady announced quietly. From beneath the counter, he produced a small wooden box, ornately carved with symbols Cal didn't recognize. "Last chance to back out, Jerry." Jerry rolled up his sleeve, exposing a forearm mottled with track marks. "Let's get this party started." With practiced movements, Grady opened the terrarium and used a forked stick to lift the rattlesnake. The creature writhed in protest, its rattle buzzing angrily. In one fluid motion, Grady pressed the snake's head against Jerry's exposed arm. The bite happened so quickly, Cal almost missed it. 2 small puncture wounds appeared on Jerry's skin, beading with blood. The snake was returned to its enclosure. Jerry's face contorted into an expression of pain mixed with ecstasy. He howled, pumping his fist in the air. "Now that's living!" He turned toward Cal, eyes wild. "Your turn, soldier, or are you going to run away again?" Cal knew he was being manipulated, knew this was madness. But something stirring deep in his chest, something he'd thought long dead, responded to the challenge. How many nights had he lain awake, pistol in hand, contemplating an end to the nightmares? How many times had his finger tightened on the trigger, only to relax again out of some twisted sense of obligation to suffer? To bear witness? "I'll take the antivenom," Jerry announced abruptly, his bravado evaporating like morning dew. Sweat poured down his face now, his pupils dilated to black pools. Just kidding about the all-night part. Science experiment completed. Let's not get crazy here. Grady studied him impassively. You sure? Once you take it, the challenge is over. No free drinks, no second chances. Jerry nodded frantically. Positive, getting a little fuzzy around the edges already. As Grady turned to retrieve the antivenom, Cal made his decision. He rolled up his sleeve. I'll do it, he said quietly, and I'll wait till morning. Jerry's face split into that too-wide grin again. Now we're talking. 2 warriors entering the Valley of Shadow. He accepted a small vial from Grady, downing its contents in one swallow. Though I'll watch from the sidelines, if it's all the same. Cal hardly felt the bite. A sharp sting, nothing more. He'd endured far worse. As Grady returned the snake to its home, Cal raised his bourbon in a silent toast to the empty air. Now what? He asked. Now, Grady replied, we wait. An hour had passed, maybe 2. Time was becoming elastic. Jerry had stopped talking, which should have been a blessing. Instead, his silence was more disturbing than his manic rambling had been. He sat perfectly still, staring at his reflection in the mirror behind the bar, occasionally tilting his head as though listening to distant music. Water, Cal managed to croak. His tongue felt swollen, foreign in his mouth. Grady placed a glass before him without comment. Cal drained it in 3 desperate swallows, but his thirst only intensified. The liquid sat heavy in his stomach, sloshing uncomfortably when he moved. The walls of the bar seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in rhythm with Cal's heartbeat. The ceiling fans cast spinning shadows that resembled helicopter blades. For a moment, he was back in the transport chopper, deafened by the rotor wash, watching the Afghan mountains unfold beneath him like a topographical nightmare. You okay there, soldier? Cal blinked. The woman in flannel stood beside him now, studying him with evident concern. Up close, he noticed strange details. How the light seemed to pass partially through her silhouette. How her voice carried an echo it shouldn't have in the close confines of the bar. Darla, she said, extending a hand that Cal didn't take. Don't worry. It gets worse before it gets different. Concern washed across his face. What is this? Cal asked, gesturing vaguely at the room, at himself, at everything. Darla's smile was tinged with sadness. A crossroads. A threshold. Depends who you ask. She sipped her whiskey. You hear the howl yet? Before Cal could ask what she meant, the door to the bar burst open. Cold air rushed in, impossible given the desert heat, carrying with it the scent of dust and sage and something metallic, like blood. In the doorway stood nothing. Empty desert night. Stars scattered like broken glass across black velvet. But Cal could feel something watching from that emptiness. Something patient and ancient and hungry. He blinked, and the doorway was empty again. Just a rectangle of darkness framing the lonely parking lot. Told you it gets weird, Darla said, returning to her booth. Cal's watch had stopped. The bar's clock showed 3 different times, depending on when he looked at it. Outside, the moon hung bloated and yellow, casting shadows that moved independently of their owners. Midnight special, Grady announced, placing a small vial next to Cal's water glass. Anti-venom. It's still an option. Cal stared at the clear liquid. The sensible part of his mind, the medic who'd treated snakebites in the field, screamed at him to take it. The venom was spreading. His arm had swollen to twice its normal size, veins tracing dark paths beneath his skin. But another part, the part that had been seeking punishment, oblivion, release, pushed the vial away. Your call, Grady said, retrieving it without judgment. Cal's vision doubled, trebled. The bar stretched impossibly long, then snapped back like a rubber band. The cheap paneling on the walls peeled away, revealing hieroglyphics etched into ancient stone, figures of men with animal heads, spirals that hurt to look at directly, eyes that blinked as he watched. And then came the dreams. He saw the burning Humvee again, but this time he could see inside it as the flames consumed his friends. Their skin blackened and peeled away, but they continued to move, to scream, to accuse him with eyeless sockets. Why didn't you save us, Doc? Lieutenant Marsden asked, his jaw working despite being disconnected from his skull. You were right behind us. You saw the IED. Why didn't you warn us? Cal whispered, I didn't know. I swear to God. I didn't know. The little Afghan girl appeared next, her stomach still torn open from the shrapnel, intestines glistening wetly. American doctor, she said in perfect English, though in reality she'd never spoken a word to him. You promised to help. I tried. I tried everything, Cal sobbed. Not everything, she replied. You're still breathing. The visions shifted, melted, reformed. Coyotes with human eyes stalked through the desert, their howls forming words he almost understood. Shadowy soldiers marched across the dunes, carrying their own severed heads under their arms like footballs. Cal found himself outside the bar, though he had no memory of leaving. The night air was cool against his feverish skin. His motorcycle waited in the parking lot, beckoning. Escape. Freedom. He staggered toward it, fumbling with keys that suddenly seemed alien in his trembling hands. The ignition wouldn't catch, the engine turning over again and again without firing. Looking up, Cal realized with dawning horror that the landscape had changed. No matter which direction he faced, the bar stood before him. 4 identical structures, 4 neon signs, 4 doors leading inside. From the darkness beyond, yellow eyes watched, dozens of them, blinking in unison. The coyotes drew closer, circling, their yipping calls transforming into something else, the wailing of infants, high and desperate and accusatory. Cal ran, but the desert sand pulled at his feet like quicksand. Each step required tremendous effort, as though gravity had intensified around him alone. The coyotes' cries grew louder, closer. He fell to his knees, retching bile onto the cracked earth. When he looked up, Jerry stood before him, but changed. His body twitched and convulsed, his silhouette blurring at the edges. As Cal watched in horror, Jerry's ears elongated, his nose and mouth stretching into a muzzle. Fur sprouted across his exposed skin. What's happening to me? Jerry's voice emerged distorted, halfway between human speech and animal shriek. Make it stop! Cal recoiled. I can't help you. I'm not... Jerry screamed. You're a medic. His transformation accelerated. You're supposed to help people. That's your job. Cal's medic instincts flared, assess the situation, stabilize the patient, call for evacuation, but he suppressed them ruthlessly. I came here to end me, not save you. Jerry fell to all fours, his clothing tearing as his body reconfigured itself. His agonized screams faded into high-pitched squealing. Where the man had been, a desert jackrabbit now crouched, trembling, its eyes still horribly human. The door to the bar opened. Grady stood silhouetted against the light. He chose the anti-venom, the bartender said simply. This is the price. The jackrabbit bolted past them both, racing into the darkness. Instantly, the coyote's cries changed pitch, from mourning to hunting. The sound of pursuit faded into the distance. Was that real? Cal asked, his voice hoarse. As real as you need it to be, Grady replied. Come inside. It's not safe out here for those who haven't decided. Cal woke slumped at the bar. Same stool, same half-empty glass before him. His watch was running again, showing 3:42 a.m. His body shook with uncontrollable tremors, his hands vibrating against the counter like hummingbird wings. The sun will be up soon, Grady said softly, appearing from nowhere. You'll know by then. Know what? Cal managed through chattering teeth. Whether you belong to the desert or to yourself. Cal turned toward the bar's grimy mirror. His reflection stared back, but wrong. Its movements didn't quite sync with his own. Its eyes gleamed gold in the low light. As he watched, his image flickered, human one moment, something else the next. Something with a long muzzle, pointed ears, and intelligent, predatory eyes. What's happening to me? He whispered. A hand touched his shoulder. Darla stood beside him, her outline wavering like heat mirage. The venom isn't what you think, she said. It's not poison. It's an offering, a key to unlock what you really are. Cal shook his head. I don't understand. Tears tracked down his cheeks. The desert tests everyone who crosses it, she explained. Most just pass through, unchanged. But some, the broken ones, the lost ones, it offers a choice. Accept what you've become or become something new. Cal stared at his transformed reflection. What if I want to stay broken? Darla's expression softened. Then you already chose. The mirror cracked, a jagged line splitting Cal's reflection down the middle. Human on one side, beast on the other. The division felt right somehow. Truthful. Grady approached, holding the vial of antivenom. Last chance before sunrise. Once the transformation begins in earnest, there's no turning back. Cal studied the clear liquid. So simple, so tempting. A return to what he knew. The pain, the guilt, the slow death of memory and regret. He pushed it away. I didn't come for half measures. Outside, The first pale light of dawn touched the eastern horizon. Cal's body seized, muscles locking as fire raced through his veins. He collapsed to the floor, bones cracking and reforming, skin stretching to accommodate new shapes. The pain was excruciating, but also purifying. With each broken bone, each torn ligament, each eruption of fur through skin, something else broke free. The guilt, the shame, the crushing weight of survival. His consciousness expanded, senses sharpening to supernatural acuity. He could smell water 3 miles distant, could hear the heartbeats of desert mice burrowing beneath the sand, could taste the approaching dawn on his lengthening tongue. Cal howled, not in agony, but in release, in acceptance, in becoming. He burst through the bar's door on all fours, racing into the desert that now called to him with 1,000 voices. The coyotes joined him, no longer hunters but kin, their songs weaving with his into a tapestry of belonging. As the sun crested the mountains, he collapsed in exhaustion. His last human thought drifted away like morning mist, replaced by something simpler, cleaner, unbroken. Something rough and warm rasped across Cal's face. He opened his eyes to blinding sunlight and the retreating form of a coyote bounding across the sand. It paused once to look back at him, then disappeared into the shimmering heat haze. Cal sat up, disoriented. His clothes were torn and filthy. His body ached in strange places, and his mouth tasted of copper and sage. But his mind was quiet. The screaming had stopped. He staggered to his feet, squinting at his surroundings. In the distance stood a familiar shape, the bar where he'd spent the night. He trudged toward it, questions burning in his throat. But as he drew closer, confusion replaced certainty. This wasn't the lively establishment he remembered. This building had been abandoned for years, decades perhaps. The windows were shattered, the door hung on a single rusted hinge, and the walls were covered in layers of graffiti. The neon sign lay broken on the ground, its tubes long, dark. "Hello?" Cal called, his voice echoing through the empty structure. "Grady? Darla?" Only silence answered him. He moved through the decrepit interior, finding no trace of the bar from the previous night. No bottles behind the counter, no snake terrarium, no ceiling fans. Just dust, rot, and the lingering sense that something sacred or cursed had once stood here. Outside, his motorcycle waited exactly where he'd parked it, keys still in the ignition. As Cal approached it, movement caught his eye, a desert jackrabbit watching warily from behind a withered sagebrush. It twitched its nose, studying him with unnervingly intelligent eyes, then darted away into the scrubland. Cal swung his leg over the bike, wincing at muscles sore in unfamiliar ways. The engine started on the first try. As he prepared to pull away, he caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. His eyes flashed gold in the sunlight. He rode east, away from the ruins, away from questions without answers. For the first time since Afghanistan, the weight in his chest had lifted. The ghosts still followed. He could feel them riding pillion, but their accusatory whispers had transformed into something like benediction. Behind him, a coyote howled in the morning light. Cal smiled. It sounded like goodbye. Dreams and nightmares share one intriguing quality. They both end upon waking. But for those who walk the boundary between worlds, perhaps the true terror lies not in what haunts our sleep, but in discovering that reality itself is merely another kind of dream. Cal Rooker sought oblivion in an abandoned desert bar, but found transformation instead. A reminder that sometimes the most monstrous thing about a man is not what he becomes, but what he refuses to leave behind.